I'm John Dolan. I'm a photographer of people who are in the middle of dramatic moments in their life.
So you have a book coming out. How long has this been in the works?
Well, this book has been in the works certainly for 10 years. I've been pushing it hard for the last 5 years. It's gone through multiple dummy iterations. And then somehow in the middle of the pandemic last August, I got the green light from a publisher in Italy. So it's a remarkable thing that the door opened right in the middle of when I had a lot of time at home to work on it and to do all the things you have to do before a book comes out. Um, so it's a sort of one of those things where I was pushing against the door, and then the door opened uh, at a moment I least expected it.
Yeah, especially during the pandemic because Italy was hit pretty hard. So it's
Oh, my publisher had
interesting.
COVID.
Yeah,
All the meetings were on Zoom, and it did not look like a happy place. But just coming back there from there yesterday, it's a much different place, and it was an incredible experience.
yeah. Um, so there's a lot to get into. I definitely want to go through the logistics of like making the book and the process and all of that because that's a whole thing, especially since you're saying it took like 10 years.
Yeah.
But I guess I want to start I guess at the beginning of, I guess, why you wanted to make a book. And the genesis for this, a lot of is you don't see a lot of photographers making fine art books of their wedding work. Most wedding images are consumed by the family only, typically. And so being able to make work that goes beyond just that family's sentimental emotions to the imames
That was
is
really
another level.
Yeah, that was really the challenge of the book. Was I mean, first off, every photographer kind of dreams of doing a monograph at some point.
Mhm.
Every serious photographer. But what I've learned over the years is that just because you think you should have a book come out doesn't mean you get to do it. It's the publishing industry requires some sort of reason for that book to exist outside of your own ego and outside of just the desire. Um, and they put up obstacles all along the way to make it difficult to get a book published. I had this feeling that weddings have been so undervalued by the art community and by the community in general, our society in general, as a serious topic for consideration. So the game for me was all along to make a book that even if you did not know the people in the pictures, you still could be fascinated by the images. Uh, the way we edited the book was to make each picture stand on its own as a work of art or as a strong photograph. Um, so I wasn't editing for content, meaning uh, getting ready, showing the flowers, showing the dress, all these sorts of things. I was looking at as a photography book, as a photo book. Did it flow? Did it have compelling images? Um, and in another way to simplify it, I had a friend many years ago help me edit it, the early genesis of the book, into two camps, into images of truth and images of beauty. And so she basically took 300 of my pictures and put them in two piles. And then there was actually a third pile of these in between moments, but a pile of moments of truth and moments of beauty. So, when you have this many years of work, of over 25 years of work, certain pictures rise to the top. And I've been collecting those images for all those years with a special star next to them as possible images for a book. And that was the basis of it.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious if as you're editing weddings and going through them, if you're for 25 years, you've been like, maybe in the monograph 20 years from now, this might go in, kind of a thing.
I had a little keyword, and it was just called "I do" because that was the working title many years ago. Just the simple words "I do."
Yeah.
So I've always had that. I've always kind of stolen a picture away from edit and put that in the "I do" box and or the "I do" keyword, and I early on I showed the book to a publisher and he was excited. He sent it to his bosses over in England, and they said, "Why would anybody want to look at other people's wedding pictures?" And I just thought, that is a limited view, and that's somebody who doesn't understand what these pictures are about. These pictures are universal, and there's a drama in each wedding that is incredibly rich. So in my mind, the pictures were not wedding pictures. They were photographs from a wedding. And there's a difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. This idea of, I don't know, photography is at its best when it helps you understand our world. And
Right.
yeah, like you're saying, it's humans. It's understanding the human's experience. They just happen to be at a wedding in a way, or the human experience of what a wedding creates in a sense, possibly.
Well, isn't it? I mean, you've been to enough weddings to know that it's this perfect pressure test, this perfect kind of experiment where you put X number of people in a pressurized situation for a limited amount of time, for 8 hours, and you see what happens. Put all this pressure on it, and then the emotions just pour out, and there aren't that many other times we have that much concentrated human interaction with people we love and people we tolerate, and so it's just infinite variety within that same experiment each time.
Yeah. When you're editing, going through a wedding, what in your mind flags like this is a possibility? I don't know if you can put that into words, but there's something that can trigger that's like maybe.
Well, the basis of your question is interesting because it's not when I'm editing the wedding, it's while I'm shooting. I'm looking for moments of truth and moments of beauty. So I'm looking for that revealing moment, and it's always just a 60th of a second or 125th of a second. It's a sliver that made it into the book. So the pictures that are in this book, I'd say almost all of them were single frames that rose above, single frames that that went to another level of either a deeper level or a higher level. So it's not I'm on motor drive clicking away and I just grab one of those pictures. These were moments where everything came together and something deep was revealed.
Yeah, I think you often say, photograph what it feels like, not what it looks like.
Yes. I mean, that's the basis of my approach, which is that I'm flowing along the wedding with everybody and trying to bottle that feeling that exists on that night. But within that flow of a wedding weekend, there are just these moments where the light, the emotion, my photographic abilities all come together. And some of the moments in the book were not huge moments at the wedding. They weren't the kiss or whatever the 7 big wedding pictures are. But they reveal something much deeper about the fragility of relationships or the complexity of family or any of these other things that often get overlooked when people are just sticking to the shot list and going through the day. So it's these, I always think of them as gems, but I think it's something more precise. It's like these really razor thin slivers of really important. It's kind of, I've thought of it recently as these are small moments of great importance. So it's like these little moments that mean a huge amount.
do you feel like these are moments for you that you're resonating personally as a photographer and as a viewer? Do your clients tend to also resonate with these same images, or do you feel that not always, that they're like, I don't want that one?
I I think we're certainly at this point, the clients I work with, we are so in sync. And, one of the unique things that I've worked out over the years is that my clients don't know what they're going to get because I don't shoot the same every weekend. I have a kind of a diverse style. So when I hand deliver the pictures to them, they don't know what's in the box. I think with some photographers, you can predict what the picture is going to be. I don't know what's going to be in the box until I get the film back. And so that means their expectation is really amorphous. And 6 weeks, 7 weeks after their wedding, they're looking at this set of pictures and they're just primed to really respond to it. Because I try to hit them on an emotional truth level, and we're in sync.
Mm. So in a way, I think this is interesting because I don't know of a lot of wedding photographers that do it this way, because when they're doing albums or books, it's always if they do pre-design it, they're always getting feedback from the client, and then they're taking stuff in and out. Where you're delivering something that they have no idea what they're about to look at, which feels like it's a microcosm. Like your editing process for that feels like that's just a small sample of the entire monograph, essentially.
Yes, I mean, I give people this first box of 15 pictures, and that is my take on their wedding. It's not one picture from each part of the wedding. It's just 15 pictures that I think will last 50 years or 100 years. They're 15 pictures that have this resonance to them. And then if they want to do a book, we do that later. But the first thing they see are these 15 gems. And the impact of that is that, excuse me, it relieves them of the pressure of having to work on their album, which I don't think you should do 6 weeks after your wedding. I think it takes years to really know what pictures should be in there. But so I want to relieve the pressure, and also I want to help them remember their wedding in a really glorious way, in a really deep way. So that's what I'm trying to fill in that box. Treasure chest.
Yeah. Thinking back, some of those 15 images, I'm assuming a lot of those end up in the book as well.
Yes, there's definitely crossover. There's not many images. There certainly aren't many images in the book that the clients didn't adore. I mean, part of the process of doing the book was contacting people, some of them from 25 years ago. And that was a magnificent, really beautiful set of emails to exchange with people. Some of them I hadn't talked to in years, and some of them have 3 kids, but we're connected from that night. And almost everybody said yes. So,
because you had to reach out to get permission for them to run it.
Yeah, I just thought that was the polite thing to do, and I don't know legally, but I think it was just the smart thing to do, and I certainly wouldn't want to not do that.
Right.
And it was just so fun last autumn to get in touch with everybody.
Yeah, I can imagine the stories. Things have shifted a lot in 25 years.
Yeah, and some of it was just even unspoken. It was just like a simple yes, a delightful, loving yes. So grateful to people.
You mentioned something just a second ago about going with the flow at a wedding. Recently I heard a podcast kind of talking about like Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know much about Taoism, or like is that a philosophy you can take and put into a wedding? Because they talk about that like a river and going with the flow, essentially.
I never studied it formally, but certainly in college, I think we were supposed to read Zen and the Art of Archery, which I may have gotten a little bit of, but I think it came about with maturity. It came about with all these years, and certainly I've understood the flow state, and the less hard that I work, the better the pictures are. But it really started to formalize it in the past, I don't know, 5 or 10 years by doing a form of meditation before a wedding. But it's my form, which is I just lie down, I have all my bags packed, my suit ready, and I just take a 5 or 10 minute nap before going to the bride's house. And what I'm doing is opening myself and making that empty vessel, all those sorts of things, which are in a lot of religions. But for me, it's I'm just imagining this bowl that's going to be filled up with these two families. So, my purpose is to walk into the house with all my sensors on high alert. And that means I'm not going in with, I don't go in pumped up. I don't go in with a battle plan. I don't do jumping jacks beforehand. I just kind of go, I don't know what's going to happen today. And it makes it so I can react quickly, and the most important thing is that I can feel what other people are feeling, because I'm not filled up with an agenda or a pre-programmed, pre-choreographed idea of what's going to happen. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned as a mature photographer, is to let go and trust in the day. And I don't scout. I don't, all those things that some people are really hooked onto for security. I've let all that stuff go, because, I mean, if you're really honest, it's a flow of a day. You know what's going to happen. Every wedding is sort of the same. It's the same way I've let go of a light meter, because the light's always the same. In the shadows, it's 125 at f8. If in the New York is 60 at 2.8, it's like there's certain places you just know, your light. And I don't want to be wasting my time thinking about the dumb stuff. I want to be, it's almost cliche to say, to be present and be open, but it's an incredible ride when you are getting to know all the people in the room, and they sense that you're not just going through the motions, or you're not working that day. I never want people to think that I'm, working really hard to crush this wedding. I'm trying to do the opposite thing, which is I'm like a guest. I'm getting to know people. I'm enjoying the day. I'm having a drink every once in a while, and I'm having conversations to know the people better. Then I've enjoyed the wedding as much as the guests.
Yeah. You mentioned, you kind of have the metaphor of a wedding as a play. I've also referred to it maybe as like a chat, like you're playing chess or something, where you have the pieces and they're all kind of moving in front of you. And I think we've talked about this previously, but I can imagine you working and then you seeing the players moving in front of you, in front of the board, if you will, and there's kind of this, hum, or there's this vibration you felt. I know we've talked about that, like when it's coming together, like you're seeing it ahead of time, and then it's like boom, then you get it, and then it goes away, and it's gone. Is that accurate for you?
Well, the play metaphor is the structure of my book, which is Act 1 is the two people, they're getting ready, but they're really isolated, and they're a little bit nervous and a little bit stressed, and they're uncertain the looks on their faces are a little bit uncertain in anticipation of the wedding. And then Act 2 is when the two people come together, and you see there's kind of their faces relax. And Act 3 is just the explosion of the reception. But I really, I'm fascinated by the range of emotions throughout a day. And it's one of the things I've been looking for in other people's wedding photographs. I really try to encourage people when I teach to expand that definition of what a wedding photograph is from the narrow definition of your best day ever and everything's incredible and it's just like true romance, all these things that are in the slightly saccharine version of a wedding. Even though those moments are true, I think there's more to it. And so I just try to encourage people and give permission to photographers to, be open to the melancholy and the bittersweet and the complexity and all the good stuff is the imperfect stuff, the unplanned, the untamed moments of what happens when people get together. So it's all out there, and it seems to me that so many photographers are in these behavioral channels. They've learned to do a certain kind of picture, and they can't get out. So I try to shake people out of their paths as if it's like cross-country ski paths. Everybody's doing the same pictures every weekend, and I try to tell people, jump out and go into the wilds of the wedding and just experience it from a different perspective.
Yeah. How do you, I don't know, what are maybe some good advice for people for breaking those ruts? Because I mean, the industry and the culture is so deep, and the grooves it's a well-worn path,
I realize that the industry almost discourages experimentation and discourages true artistry by keeping people in the channels. So I think it takes some guts. I think it takes some shaking things out. Some people have been experimenting with different smaller cameras and just shooting loosely, or I've always encouraged people to do a wedding for a family member for free, where you have no obligations. You need to do a couple weddings where you are you're the client instead of the bride, and where you free yourself of that obligations. There's the base level thing that I'm sure you've met people that a lot of freelancers, we are trained to be pleasers. We're people pleasers. So you have to almost shock yourself into not trying to please just the bride, but please yourself. And it's harder than it looks.
Yeah. I can imagine maybe even like becoming, I don't know if you think about an idea of something where you were a second or third photographer at somebody's wedding, just for free almost, of like, I just want to go and shoot and not talk to anybody, not be responsible for a list and just show up.
I'd be curious if that works being a second shooter, because I think in some ways going by yourself to a small wedding is the best thing, or finding a nurse in your neighborhood who's getting married, and just it's a simple thing in the backyard, or a cousin or something. Because I think when you're a second, it's not your gig and it's not your relationship with the clients. I think you need to be inside. You need to be embedded with somebody who you really like and want to do something great for, and just sort of say, let me do this for free and I'll just blow you away with 10 pictures. That's one way I've seen it work with some photographers. My buddy Daniel Kim has been doing great stuff like that, and I think it takes that. You almost have to walk off the plank and dive into the water to really make it work. You can't have a safety net, and you can't, go halfway. You have to go all in and do something crazy.
Do you think changing your gear up or something too much would be a detriment? Because if you're thinking too much of the technical, maybe.
Yeah, you need to simplify it. And I think Daniel said he just got a small 35 with one camera and went with 20 rolls of film or something. You should have him on and have a chat with him.
Okay. Noted. With the book, I'm curious, finalizing the final pictures, did you make prints of everything and then put them up on a wall and then resequence them? Like, what was that part like?
So I had made quite a formal book dummy that my friend Holger Toss printed, and we had it bound, and it was just a beautiful 9x11 kind of big, quite a handsome book. And that's what I used to show this book designer named Yolanda Cuomo. And she was the one who she saw that dummy and really liked it and put me in touch with Damiani Books in Italy, who she works with quite a bit. Once we got the green light, I went back to Yolanda's studio, and she made, maybe I sent her 250, 300 prints, or 350 JPEGs, and she made very small prints, just on, cheap printing paper. And she cut them up and she laid them all out on this huge table in her studio. And she's an interesting character because she's been in the business forever. She actually helped me get one of my first weddings 30 years ago, a friend of hers. And she worked with the Diane Arbus estate and Richard Avedon, and she did Pete Souza's books about Obama, and she's kind of a legend, but she's also kind of old school. So we were not using the computer. We were cutting and pasting and moving prints around and taking pictures off. And then there were certain pictures she missed because they were so small, and certain pictures she found because they just had a freshness from her eyes. So it was a lot of back and forth, and multiple trips on the ferry across to New Jersey where her studio is. And it was really, the whole thing was deeply emotional for me because it was happening after all these years. Like, it was finally happening. And a great designer makes your pictures look better. So it was quite an experience to see that happen.
How long was that process working with her?
At least 6 months. We kind of started in August or July or August and kept going through the winter, and she prepped everything for it to go to Italy. And then I went over last week and went on press check to check the color and tweak the color. And but it's been it's an involved process, and it's not for the faint of heart or the inexperienced, because there's a million decisions to make. And but getting that flow right was it was almost as if we just went through the book. She would make a draft and a little draft and then print that out. And then once we got it 99% of the way there, we would look on the computer and just move certain pictures around. And so it was kind of analog. And then once we got the flow, we were in good shape.
Did you learn anything about your work or yourself as an artist, like kind of reflecting back on all of this?
That's such a good question. I don't know what I learned. I think what I've learned is that you can't go backwards. So you can't just all of a sudden make a bunch of pictures and shove them in the book. Like, it was that what we do as photographers is we go in person, first person narrative experiences on, for me, it's 354 Saturday nights. So it's like, if I hadn't done that one wedding back in 1994, that picture wouldn't have gotten made. This is an obvious thing, but photography is so much about being there and taking the risk at that moment. So a lot of my early weddings were super risky because I didn't know any better, and there weren't any other wedding photographers to look at. So I was making it up. And I just, I think the lack of the ignorance that I had was really blissful. And so it was quite freeing to just shoot loose at weddings back in the 90s. And, you know, there's a large number of pictures from the early days in the book that really give it this weight of, you know, these pictures are not, they're not made yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, because there's not there's not a ton of wedding magazines. I mean, you helped with Martha at the very beginning with her wedding magazine, and it wasn't like Instagram was around there. Like, you're pretty free of influences.
The only influences we had were the only influences we had in the 90s were pictures that we didn't want to make. So sort of like what not to do. There were a lot of pictures out there we would see either in bad wedding advertisements or in some of the magazines. It was like, yeah, we're not doing that. It's really clear. So I think I feel for photographers these days because there's a lot of great photography out there. So it's much harder to break away from the herd because everything's at a pretty high level quality wise. But I always worry that people are working too much on the commerce rather than the art. If we're talking about the balance between art and commerce, everybody's so good on their SEO or whatever all these things are that I don't do. They're, but they're not working. They're not going to the museum, or they're not watching great cinematographers. Or so I regularly encourage people to shift that balance and really dig in and teach yourself the history of photography and see some good art.
In terms of purchasing the book, where can people go? Just your website, or do you have another site?
To purchase the book now, there are 3 options. There's on my website, there's links to pre-order from me if you want a signed copy. There's also an option to get a signed print along with that. There's Amazon pre-order, and if you're in Europe or elsewhere, Damiani Books has you can order from them directly too. The pre-order thing is new to me, but I think this is the new way of publishing where we're selling a lot of books leading up to the launch, so that a good portion of them might be sold beforehand, and then the book comes out September 15th or so, maybe September 20th, and that's when the books will ship the books. I have a certain number of copies myself, and then it'll be in bookstores and places like Anthropology and other cool places.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. So you're getting ready to this is super interesting to me because I think, I don't know, it feels like you're getting ready to influence a bunch of people in a big way.
Well, when they gave me the green light, I think next fall of 2021 will be an amazing time for this book to come out, because everything I experienced last year in the 6 or 7 small weddings I did pointed towards the imperfect. It pointed towards weddings shifting towards being intimate and memorable and meaningful, so meaningful, and not necessarily this big, epic, best day ever. Nobody last year said this was the wedding they'd always dreamt of. But everybody said this was the wedding that they were meant to have, or this was just enough. So I kind of feel like if I can make a small dent in the wedding industry and make people think about weddings in a deeper way, then the book's been a success. I want to broaden the conversation and deepen the conversation, and I think certainly the people I'm talking to who are getting married this year or next year, they just have a sincerity, or there just seems to be less room for worrying about the small stuff when we've been through something this big. And I hope that carries on. It may not, but I just did a wedding 10 days ago that was just absolutely incredible, 65 people. And it was a gift to all the guests, and just to have an experience where people were together, and it was not fussy. It was not overly choreographed. I kind of feel like it's that we're moving from fine art wedding photography to some new thing, whether it's organic or small batch or limited edition, or I don't know what the word is, but it feels to me like a shift that less is more, or simple is better, or real is back, or make whatever phrase you want. But I just was at a workshop in Tennessee near you at Shaker Rag, and we had 14 people, some just incredible photographers, and it was so raw, and the emotions were raw because people hadn't been together and focused on something like this for a long time. And I just felt like people are ready to break out of the norms and break out of those paths and experiment and get real and get down to it. And so I'm excited by what pictures can be made that we haven't made before. Let's not make the same pictures every Saturday.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm just so grateful for you and the conversations that you're going to stir up in people, and you constantly are. So I think this is definitely going to broaden the conversations amongst photographers. And I'm as I search through photography, because I'm always searching, trying to find people's works, like I feel like there are more and more photographers that are looking for more imperfect things, and more open to it. Not some of it's, they've gone back to film in some ways, and so there's the imperfectness of film that they're letting bleed into their work. But I think it's just like step one, and then it's starting to get into, even with digital, just their approaches to the moments they're capturing and things. It's broadening. I feel like hopefully that community can come together and support each other through that. I think that's been the difficult thing, because there hasn't really been a place for everybody to connect like that.
Yeah.
But it's there, and so I see you kind of at the leading charge of all of this in a way.
Well, it's funny because we kind of I made up the word imperfect a bunch of years ago, just kind of as a cheeky thing or a joke, just because people were always saying, "Oh, my wedding was so perfect." It's like, well, weddings are not always perfect, and that doesn't make them not incredible and enjoyable. So I don't want people just to make messy pictures or blurry pictures or Holga and just call it imperfect. I think it's about appreciating. I think it's when you see it. It's that moment that wasn't so staged, or that moment that wasn't so controlled, and in getting photographers to let go of directing and let go of making sure that everything is just so. Because I think often when you're doing that and you're fluffing the dress and you're doing this and this, you're missing the good stuff. So it's just getting people to open their eyes to all that, the stuff that's floating in the air, and because there's just so much there that it's there for the taking.
Yeah. There's definitely certain people, certain parts of the industry, or feel like they can't be a successful photographer if they don't know how to pose people or something like that. And so this giving them permission to, it's just document how they are, it's enough.
Well, I understand the challenge of it, I think, because enough people have talked to me about it. What do you do if the people are awkward? And I've always thought you just lean into that awkwardness and give it some time and space and see what happens. You might shock yourself when you just zip it. Just be present and don't go down your list of go-tos, and don't tell them. cannot for the life of me tell another guy how to look at his betrothed. And, it's just, it doesn't work for me to tell a guy, like, why don't you smell her hair, or any of that stuff that I think gets trained into people. Put your hand here. The words cannot come out of my mouth to tell another guy how to hold his wife. So I've learned other techniques of, I just move a lot. I keep moving constantly, and I keep them moving. And then usually if they're kind of in love and kind of excited, they're gonna look good in the pictures. So it's letting them feel what they're feeling and just get out of the way.
Once the book releases, is there anything for you afterwards? You doing a book tour?
I don't know about a book tour. We'll see what happens. We're hoping for a book launch party in mid-October in New York. Hoping that we can find a day that Martha Stewart is free. That would be great fun. She wrote a really lovely essay for the book, and as well as Sylvia Plahe also wrote a great essay. She was my mentor.
Great.
So, my dream is to have a bash in New York, and as many of my couples come to the bash, and if they want to wear their wedding dresses, they're totally free to do that. But just to have all my clients in one room would make my big old heart swell. So I'm not going to do any lectures or anything like that. We're just going to have a big party, and also for me to celebrate the industry, because the New York wedding industry is incredibly supportive and unified, and we all know each other. The people who've been doing it for more than 20 years, we all know each other, and I'd love to have a night just to have everybody in one room and drink and dance.
Right.
Like a wedding.
Awesome. Yeah. Your own little celebration. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, thanks for all you do, man. Like you're definitely inspiring a lot of people, even if you don't know you are. And there's a lot of people, learning from your wisdom as you move along. So we really appreciate and really grateful for everything you're doing.
Appreciate you saying that. And I love the questions, and happy to talk anytime.